Thank you, Amir. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for a very, very warm and kind introduction. You know, Salman Rushdie once said that once you have put your work out there in public domain in the form of a book, authors should generally shy away from also telling the readers that how you should read the book. But I will try and sum up the intent behind the book and what I have tried to bring out in this book. So I think there are very rare instances in journalism where a journalistic report was used in courts to convict people, especially journalistic reports to convict people accused of mass murders. So I testified in 3 cases as a prosecution witness. We all know Naroda Patia, around 100 people were killed there. Gulbarg Society, almost 60 people were killed there, including Ehsan Jafri. And Naroda Gaon, I think about a dozen people were killed there. So I was made a prosecution witness in all these 3 cases by the SIT, by the Supreme Court constituted SIT. And I testified in each of these cases over several days. Normally what happens that once the story is published, that's when the media spotlight goes off, which is the story takes its own life. And nobody, I mean, normally journalism or reporters, they don't go and see what is happening in courtrooms. And I have tried to bring out what happens in courtrooms because I used to go there and testify as a journalist, and my CDs sometimes would be played what I had recorded as an undercover reporter. But the kind of hostility, animosity that you face within the courtroom in a case which is supposedly being monitored by the Supreme Court is something that I have tried to narrate, that it is so difficult to secure justice. It is so difficult to fight for justice. I remember I appeared before a judge, which I have also written in the book. I appeared before a judge in Gulbarg Society massacre case. And from the word go, he was very hostile. So much so that he would snicker and he would laugh at me, and he would encourage the defense to insult me. And before I entered the courtroom, I was warned that the same judge was treating other witnesses also in a similar fashion. I said perhaps he would be a little wary of a journalist, but I was wrong. So Rupa Modi, who lost her son in Gulbarg Society massacre case, when she went to testify and she broke down while narrating the events of the day, and she asked for a glass of water, the judge denied her a glass of water. Naroda Gaon case, which I have written as a concluding chapter in my book, because in Naroda Patia case, the judge relied on my testimony and convicted at least 5 people. And some people were convicted only on the basis of my testimony. And she also used my testimony to reach a finding that it was a conspiracy. But because the SIT, which was the prosecuting agency, restricted the scope of the conspiracy only to the events of the day, the judge could not go beyond the case that SIT had presented before the court. But still, the judge, Jyotsna Yagnik, she reached a finding that it was a conspiracy on the basis of the evidence that I presented in the courtroom. Subsequently, the Gujarat High Court upheld my testimony and again convicted certain people solely on the basis of my testimony. But in Naroda Gaon case, in which I testified in 2013, and that was the most humiliating experience I ever experienced in a courtroom, because I was quite used to now all the insults and intimidation and threats. But that day, because 2013 was the day when I went there, I realized that the winds were shifting. Because how you can bully even institutions, even judicial institutions was on full display on that day. So on that day, the target was not me, the target was the judge. And the defense had already moved an application before the Gujarat High Court that the judge should recuse herself because she has already convicted so many people in Naroda Patia case on the basis of my testimony. So she was going to follow the same logic. The Gujarat High Court threw out that petition, but they were not done. And then they started those tactics during the trial. They dragged my testimony for 10-12 days. The judge was very keen that before she retires, she delivers a verdict. That was, I think, January 2013, and she was set to retire at the end of 2013. But they ensured that she retired without delivering the verdict. 7 years counting, the trial is still on. Judges have come, judges have gone, public prosecutors have come, public prosecutors have gone, the trial is still on, and this is a trial which is being monitored by the Supreme Court of India. Now, this was 2013, I was done, that was my last brush with the law in Gujarat. But when Muzaffarnagar happened, and subsequently after Muzaffarnagar, the way those cases were buried, because we all know what is happening. There are orders by the government of UP to withdraw cases. Almost in all cases there has been no conviction. In cases after cases there have been witnesses who have turned hostile. There are reports that in some cases the witnesses were bought over. And then 7 years later, the Muzaffarnagar riots happened 2013. 7 years later, 2020, on the eve of US President Trump's visit to India, a riot breaks out in Delhi. One of the most horrible riots that we have ever seen in a recent memory. And again, the same script is followed, which is leading up to the Delhi riots, there was a very intense communal campaign, sloganeering of the worst kind, obnoxious, inflammatory statements, dog whistling by senior functionaries, people in power, and then finally riots happen. And a judge who questions the police in action is overnight transferred out of Delhi. And since then we have seen that there is an attempt to build a conspiracy that the human rights activists or the anti-CAA activists who were peacefully protesting, they were responsible for the riots. So the same thing, which is, I mean, in the opening remarks, Mr. Kanchan Ilaiah, he touched upon a lot of things. He said that somebody said this about Mr. Narendra Modi, somebody said that about Mr. Narendra Modi. There are conflicting reports. Madhu Kishwar said this, somebody said that. I would just, draw the attention of the audience to how some of these cases were deliberately killed, botched up. There was no attempt to give any kind of justice or restitution to the victims. So let's talk about Bilkis Bano case. She lost 14 of her family members. In a field they were killed and buried. She told repeatedly, identified people from a village who were responsible for the killing, who had mutilated her, her family members, brutalized her and her family members. But what did the Gujarat government do? The Gujarat police officers, they buried the case, they filed a closure report. They didn't even acknowledge that 14 people were killed. They filed a closure report. The local magistrate refused to accept the closure report because he said that there is a eyewitness who says that 14 people were killed. The Gujarat police is saying no, only 3 or 4 bodies were recovered and they were just disposed of as per the process of law. It was only after NHRC approached the Supreme Court, and when the Supreme Court sent the CBI, and then the CBI exhumed the bodies, that it was established that 14 people were killed, that the local police played a role in dressing up the scene of crime, in disposing of the bodies, decapitating the bodies, burying them with salt so that they just disintegrate and are never found. Now, how can you explain that? Raju Ramachandran, the amicus curiae, in his report that he submitted to the Supreme Court, he said that this requires further investigation. That was there a conspiracy limited to the local police officers, or there was something else? Naroda Patia, until SIT stepped in, and SIT which also did a limited job, which, because I testified before the SIT, I have experienced how the SIT functioned. SIT said that, look, we have been set up by the Supreme Court. We have come here to reinvestigate these 9 cases. We will go only this far and no further, which is that some of the people who have been named by the eyewitnesses, by the survivors, and who have not been arrested, the evidence which is so manifest on the record, glaring at us, we will put that on record, but we will not go any further. And they didn't go any further. But in Naroda Patia case, look what happened. All the accused were out on bail until SIT came in, and that's how I could meet all these accused and by posing as a Hindu fanatic, win over their confidence, and they confided in me how they went about killing, slaughtering so many people within a short span of time. What was the role of the police, not only on that day, but also subsequently, that their arrests were stage managed, that they were given a VIP treatment in police custody, then in judicial custody. The case was deliberately weakened. They were assured that they would be let off. And same in Gulbarga, and in case after case. So for me, the test of the Gujarat government was obviously one in completely failing to stop the riots, but also in their subsequent conduct, which is deliberate subversion, ensuring that card-carrying members of right-wing Hindu organizations, they were appointed as public prosecutors in important cases. And I got some of those public prosecutors on tape. When I met them, they said, we were intimidating, threatening the witnesses. We were telling them that, look, you have to live peacefully, exist with this majority community, go back to the same village. So please do a compromise or take some money. This is what the office of public prosecutors was being used for. So that is the test for me, that how the Gujarat government reacted, because Mr. Ilaiah said, he pointed out that perhaps Mr. Modi alluded to, I think he never said this completely in so many words, he alluded to that I was new to the administration and I had just taken over. But what explains the 2 years of subsequent inaction, the 2 years of subsequent subversion, deliberate, cynical subversion, and what explains the subsequent 2 years of constant dog whistling? Because most of his obnoxious comments came much after the riots, like हम 5 हमारे 25, like वो साइकिल का पंक्चर बनाते हैं तो वो क्या करेंगे, we cannot allow the riot relief camps to turn into baby producing camps. All that happened subsequently. What explains that? Was that inexperience? That was not inexperience. I have written in the introduction of the book that soon after the Gujarat riots were over, the Gujarat Assembly was dissolved prematurely. The elections were advanced by 6 months. Why? Because they wanted to capitalize on the communal polarization. And when, if you remember, at that time, the Chief Election Commissioner, Lingdo, objected to it, Mr. Modi pointed out that he is doing it because he belongs to a certain community. His religion was brought into question. So I think, Yuva Nahari, the great historian, he has written in his book, the opening sentence in his book of 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. He starts the book by saying that human beings, they deal in stories. We don't like to deal in numbers. We don't like to deal in statistics. We don't like to deal with facts. I have been a journalist. I have been a trained journalist. I like to deal in facts. I don't like to deal in stories. So through this book, again, at my great, I think, professional peril, which is already has started playing out, because now I'm a practicing lawyer, I have just brought out the facts, that these are the facts. There will be stories, there were stories around Gujarat riots, there are stories around Gujarat riots. And I think all of us, many of us will continue believing what we want to believe. There were stories even when I went to Gujarat about what happened in the Sabarmati Express train, how the train caught fire. And I have tried to demystify that, which is what was fact, what was fiction. But this is a grim book, and I have ended the book by saying that it will require really remarkable pushback and perhaps a new charismatic leader, a new charismatic political force which can make secularism, inclusiveness, liberalism once more fashionable, like Gandhi made khaki fashionable, khadi fashionable, and he made inclusiveness fashionable, he made communal harmony fashionable. So we need a new a force, political force, which can make all these values again fashionable and tell people that, look, because history has shown that divided societies don't progress. Divided societies don't materially progress, they don't socially progress. Recently, I think Joseph Stiglitz was very, very outright in his comments in one of the conferences he spoke at in Kolkata, where he said that if India really wants to become a superpower, then this has to stop, because this kind of communal polarization, dividing people along the lines of community and sowing seeds of hate and anger has never made in our entire recorded history any civilization, any nation modern or prosperous. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.